All right, so hello everyone. This is a recorded information session for the Policy Design Studio in Washington, D.C. internship program. My name is Ashley Wright, a senior coordinator for the Leadership, Diplomacy, and National Security Lab. I am based in the Washington, D.C. area, and today I am with Ambassador Rod Moore, who is the director of the PDS program. And then in the next slide, he will introduce himself.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Ashley. As Ashley mentioned, my name is Rod Moore. In addition to working on the PDS program, I also do some other stuff for ASU, including running a master's program, which some of you might eventually be interested in. By way of background, I'm a retired Foreign Service officer. I worked for the State Department for a little over 30 years, primarily in Central and Eastern Europe, in the Balkans. I've been with ASU just for a couple of years. You'll see also on this slide a picture of Ambassador Ed O'Donnell, who, like me, is a retired Foreign Service officer. For the in-person, in Washington program, which we're going to discuss today, it's me who will be with you if you end up joining us. I live in the Washington, D.C. area. At times, we offer a virtual online version of this program as well. And in those cases, Ambassador O'Donnell co-teaches with me.
All right, so as you may have already noticed, this program has two parts. One is POS 494, which accounts for 3 credits. It is a live class you take at ASU in DC, which is only about a few blocks away from White House. And then POS 484, internship, which accounts for 9 credits. We're going to talk about the 2 parts of the program in the next slides. First, we're going to talk about POS 494, the class. Ambassador Moore will talk about what the class is all about in the next slide, but the photo you see here is the Barrett and O'Connor Washington Center. I call it ASU in DC because it's shorter, this is the building you will be taking POS 494 in. You will spend about 3 hours once a week for this class. And this building houses many ASU departments in schools like McCain Institute, Cronkite, Thunderbird, the law school, and of course the LDNS Lab. Ambassador Moore will talk about the course itself now.
Thank you, Ashley. It's a real pleasure and a privilege and quite frankly, a lot of fun to teach this course, which is pretty unique. It's a course which has been taught for many years through ASU. You may have heard it referred to as the Embassy Simulation course. So let me tell you a little bit about it. First of all, the fundamental goal of this program, of this course, is to introduce students, upper level students, to national security, U.S. national security policy, how it's formulated and how it's implemented in the field. And the model we use, or the conceit we use, is to stimulate a U.S. embassy in a real country and to deal with issues and challenges facing the United States in real time. So what do I mean by that? So throughout the semester, right at the very beginning of the course, each student will take on the role, a real embassy role, in this simulated embassy in a real country. And when I say real country, in the last few years, for instance, since I've been involved in this program, we have simulated the U.S. Embassy in Afghanistan, the U.S. Embassy in Russia, including during the period when the war broke out in Ukraine, the U.S. Embassy in Turkey, and many other countries have been used. And each student will play a role in the so-called country team, in other words, in a senior role in the embassy. And throughout the semester, that student will be expected to become expert in that topic. It could be as the defense attaché, as a political officer, as an economic officer, a public diplomacy officer, and so forth. You don't need to worry if you don't know what that means, because what we do with the course is we assume very little advanced knowledge about how embassies work, or how foreign policy works. So the first part of the course is actually a crash course into those topics. We'll teach you how embassies are structured, what their role is, what they do, how they function, and so forth. And then we'll spend a couple of weeks doing a really deep dive into the country you're going to be studying throughout that semester. And the idea is not for this to be an intimidating process, but to be an enjoyable and interesting one and a hands-on one. Because as I mentioned, this is a real world scenario. So when the semester starts, we don't know how it's going to end. Because every week we are going to assemble as a team. I will play the role of your ambassador, and you will be in the roles of my advisors and as our other embassy team. And we're going to be reviewing what has happened over the previous 7 days and determining how we as a mission are going to respond to those real world events. And at the end of the semester, the program culminates with you all making a presentation to a small group of experts, and you'll do it in person. It'll be a group of like maybe 3 or so people, but you're going to lay out your proposals for how the United States should deal with that country in focus, how you would manage the relationship in the years ahead. And you can and should think very creatively, and you don't need to actually imitate. We don't want you to imitate what the United States is actually doing. We want you to come up with your own ideas. And in previous years, iterations of this class, I've come up with some really creative ideas of the types of things that the United States should be doing in countries abroad. Let me mention that in addition to the so-called country team discussions, when we're reviewing current policy developments and brainstorming about new ideas, we also bring in outside speakers who are really expert in the countries we're studying. In previous iterations, we've had a former national security advisor. We've had former U.S. ambassadors. We've had senior officials of the country that we've been studying. We've brought in journalists and human rights activists and think tank experts, and even students, university students from the country we're studying, to kind of enrich the experience and to give you different perspectives on what we're studying. So you'll see on this slide a whole slew of topics that get covered. It really depends, how the extent to which we focus on any one of these or other topics which aren't mentioned really depend on the nature of the bilateral relationship that the United States has with that country. So I think you can be assured that by the end of the 15 weeks, that you're going to know a lot more about certainly the country you're studying. You're going to know a lot more about how U.S. embassies work, and you're going to know a lot more how embassies are part of the decision-making and decision implementation process of the United States government.
Okay. Went back, sorry. Okay, so the internship does not automatically come with the program. You will still have to find your own internship in Washington, D.C., but the School of Politics and Global Studies has an internship coordinator who will help you get ready to apply for DC internships. Her name is Kayla Stamey. The last slide in this session has her contact information. So you may be wondering what kind of internship I should get. Ideally, something relevant to political science or international affairs. But it can also be an internship on the Hill or a law office that deals with international issues, or maybe a think tank. And you will work about 32 hours a week, Monday through Thursday. And then Friday, you take the POS 194 class and receive 6 credits for the internship. And the remaining 3 credits will be earned by writing blogs, memos, and checking in with Ambassador Moore. Ambassador Moore, if you can talk about a little bit about this.
Sure. Let me just mention 1 or 2 words about the internship component. Obviously, if you're in an internship 4 days a week and in class 1 day a week, the internships are pretty significant. The idea is that the 2 experiences complement each other and provides you a real solid insight into how the policy process in Washington works. And it's also, being in Washington itself it's not just the time you're spending, at the office in your internship or in class with me and your colleagues. It's the activities you do outside of working hours, which really, in the past at least, have been incredibly enriching for students who have come to take part in it. For example, just before COVID, I was with a group of students who were studying Afghanistan. And they were on their own. They were establishing connections with the Embassy of Afghanistan and attending events. They were here for the time when the Senate was considering impeachment hearings, and they were able to wangle invitations. I saw them at National Day receptions and so forth. They're meeting interns from other universities and living with them in the housing here and establishing a network of contacts, which will probably be useful to them throughout their career. So it's really it's the combination of the internships and the course which make this semester in Washington just really special. So in terms of the coursework involved, now you're in 4 days a week. You're working with your supervisors, obviously, and we will interact with those supervisors, check in with them from time to time to see how you're doing, and that's you get 6 credits for the internship, and assuming, of course, that your supervisor gives you a decent evaluation of your performance. But the other 3 credits are what are reflected here, and that's basically my role is to monitor your work at the within your internship, and to check in with you from time to time, see how things are going. But also we want to see what you're learning. We want you to express, what skills you're developing, what observations you're making, and so forth. So we ask you to do, it's not very onerous, but from time to time we'll ask you maybe to post some blogs about your experiences in Washington. We may ask you to write a memo from time to time about an activity that you participated in. Perhaps you went to a hearing on Capitol Hill. Perhaps you went to a think tank panel discussion or something like that. We'll say, well, why don't you write it up and tell us what you observed? And there may be a few other things. But again, it's not very onerous. The idea is for me to make sure that that your internship is going well, but also to make sure that you are extracting from that experience, some value, and that you're able to present it in written form.
Great. Okay, so when you're in Washington, D.C., you will be living together in an intern housing called the Washington Intern Student Housing, WISH, we call that WISH. They have 5 properties in DC, and you won't know which housing assignment you will get until closer to the start of the semester. They are all metro accessible and furnished, as you can see in the pictures, and you will share a room with another student. And we're going to talk about the costs. The program fee, it's going to be around $7,500. And that's for the housing, scheduled group meals, and 1 excursion. I'm not sure where you're going, but historically, PD students went to Gettysburg with General Freakley and Ambassador Polt. Tuition and fees and other expenses like food and transportation are not included. So if you're thinking about applying, I would start looking into scholarships on GEO website now. And if you have any questions about that, we have a GEO contact, Miss Lindsay Hartman. Her information is here. And here is a sample schedule. You can just pause and review it. So we're gonna go to the next slide now. So how do we select applicants, Ambassador Moore?
Thank you, Ash. I do want to just make a comment about that. The 2 slides ago, the dollar figure on there. We know that's a significant dollar figure, and we wish it were a smaller number. That reflects in large part the cost of real estate and housing in Washington, D.C. The vast majority of that number is constitutes the housing cost. Please take Ashley's advice, try to find ways to defray the other dimensions of the programs, scholarships, and so forth. It's also possible to find paid internships. They're not easy to come by, though it's a little bit easier. The U.S. government recently announced that most U.S. government internships will be paid, for instance. And I also want you to know that we are also embarking on ways to see if we can try to find funding to bring that number down, but you can't count on that. So we wish that we're a smaller number. You can rest assured that we're doing everything possible to keep that as low as possible, because we understand that it's a burden on families. So let's scoot ahead to those 2 or 3 slides.
All right.
In terms of selection to the program, now it's generally, this is a program which has a 4 in front of it, so it's intended to be for it's an upper level course, and we generally give preference to juniors and seniors in particular, if this is their last opportunity to take the course. But doesn't mean that we don't take sophomores from time to time. As a matter of fact, some of our star students in the past have been sophomores. So we encourage sophomores to apply, but we do have to limit the size of the course in order to make the simulation work and to make it meaningful. We have to have a small enough number of students so that each of the roles that the students play are meaty enough that they can really dig their teeth into it and are able to learn something from it. We generally have a cutoff of a GPA of 3.0 or above. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we don't require any background in foreign affairs. We don't expect people to come in with advanced knowledge of the foreign policy process or so forth. And we've had many people come from criminology, engineering, and all sorts of unlikely majors. But what we do want is a strong interest in foreign affairs. We want you to be motivated to take this course because it is a unique course. And you have the opportunity when you apply, there's a very brief application that we like you to fill out. Explain why you want to take the course, because again, it is a competitive process, and we want to have a diverse group of students, diverse in terms of backgrounds as well. So we will, as I said earlier, don't worry, don't be intimidated about applying for this course if you think it's too much. We will focus on during the first 3 to 4 weeks of getting you up to cruising altitude. So everyone, no matter where your starting point is, we will work hard to bring you up to speed by week 4 of a 15-week course. So, and as you're learning more and more as the semester goes along, you'll feel pretty comfortable where you are after the first portion of the course.
So we now have over 238 PDS alums, and many of them are very successful. We have several prestigious fellowship recipients, and a lot of them went on to top-notch grad schools and secured great internships and jobs. Do you have any comments on this, Ambassador Moore?
Yeah, well, these clouds here on this slide, I think, tell a pretty interesting story. I hear from former PDS students all the time who are just doing amazing things, whether they're in the foreign service, in the U.S. military, they're studying their master's program funded by the U.S. government because they're Pickering or Payne or Angell fellows and so forth. It's like we can't promise that PDS is going to open all these doors automatically to you. But I can tell you that a lot of PDS students have gone on to some pretty incredible careers. And I can also tell you that we really enjoy staying in touch with our PDS alum. And as a matter of fact, there is an alumni association. And if you happen to be in the Washington area, particularly where most of us reside, we love getting together with you. We invite you to events here and so forth. So if you're interested in the national security field or foreign policy more generally, we like to think that PDS is a great way of getting your foot in the door.
Ambassador Moore. Oops. So the application is open through the Geo portal, And we review applications as they come. So if you have any questions, please reach out to Lindsay Hartman if it's if you have questions about scholarships, and if you have questions about internships, please email Kayla Stamey. And if you have any questions about the course or Washington, D.C., please email me, Ashley Wright. And this concludes our information session. And thank you so much for watching, and see you soon.